today, and crypto markets, but also the broader traditional finance markets today. And right now, I'm going to talk about the Bitcoin versus the US dollar probable interest rate cut that the markets, across the board in traditional finance and in crypto, the markets are expecting to see the Fed cut interest rates at some point in September, like sometime this week, maybe even they'll announce it. And then, in theory, a lot of expectations are that they will do it again, at least in November. So the first one will be because there's so much expectation that the Fed will do what they think should be done, or else if they don't do that, the U.S. economy will go right into a recession. And there are many, macroeconomists who will tell you there's all kinds of reasons why this is very likely to happen, that we could go into a recession if we don't get an interest rate cut right away. And then if we do, that'll be generally good for the markets. Prices will continue to go up. Assets, whether the traditional assets like stocks, whatever, or crypto, we'll see the markets continue to go upward and towards the end of the year. And if they do it again in January or so, then it could continue to rise, or at least be steady and then rise more in 2025. But I have to say, a lot of these things are patently ridiculous. We know what's happening with the dollar, if you are aware of the big picture. There's good economic pictures that you can paint with the US GDP rising more than expected and the unemployment being lower than people thought it would be. But if you actually look at the real numbers, right, not the rosy picture painted by the economists who know how to twist those numbers around and how to play with the statistics to report them one way or the other to support a particular narrative, GDP is not so hot in the U.S. right now, even though statistically, there is evidence to demonstrate that it's perfectly fine. It's above 2%. It's above 2%. Therefore, it's fine. It's even hot compared to the average that we expect it to be. And unemployment, same thing. Right? It's a relatively low unemployment. That's great. But if you actually look below the surface, you'll see that the employment that exists is really low paying for the most part relative to what people need to live. Right? People are not able to get by and save and live a high quality life right now with a regular, normal job in most cases. Right? Increasingly, people are having to either take up a second job, a part-time job, or even a second full-time job just to make it. Right? Whereas, some decades ago, even just a couple decades ago, you could live on a full-time job salary. Not amazingly, two decades ago, but 3, 4, or 5 decades ago, you could live not just yourself on a full-time salary, but you could support a whole family on one full-time salary. And somebody could stay at home and take care of the house and the kids. And whoever was working was earning the bread for the house. And whoever was at home was taking care of the house and everything else. It's no longer the case for most people. And most people have to have a double income household just to make ends meet. Forget saving, forget investing in their future, forget buying Bitcoin or whatever cool asset, just to buy food and keep the roof over their head and buy clothes and medicine and school books or whatever they need, pay for the gas in their car. The economy is not doing so great. In fact, it's really, really bad. Right? Yes, there are more billionaires than before. There are more millionaires than before. But in truth, $1 million today is worth what about $100,000 was worth 50 years ago. So, there were more people with 100 grand 50 years ago than there are millionaires now. By far. Which means that the separation of the financial classes is growing. The gap between the ultra wealthy, the rich, and the rest of everyone else is growing. Those that are rich or wealthy or ultra wealthy keep making more money, as they always do. And everyone else is getting poorer, including all of the classes of the middle class, upper middle class, middle class, lower middle class, and everybody that's poor, or lower class and poor. They keep losing more money and getting more poor. And there are not an increasingly huge amount of jobs that are paying significantly better wages. And yes, I know you can go to your local vocational school or government instituted program to learn and get a job and become an electrician or whatever. But not everybody has months of runway to go and learn this stuff. Right? If you're a kid and you don't want to go to college, yeah, great. You can go learn to be an electrician as long as your parents will let you live in their house for free. Or if you're a young adult and you're living at home with your parents, you can go learn a trade and come out of that trade with, a certification that you can do a professional trade and even a job that'll pay you in many places, $90K or more. Even in Pittsburgh, you can get a job as an electrician for $90K. Just coming right out of trade school. And you can learn it for free. Most people aren't willing to do the work. Fine. But there's a lot of trades. But still, most people aren't willing to do those works. Okay. Why? Because America's been turned into a service economy. Don't blame the students for that. They've been raised on that. They've been told if you learn how to do this when you graduate college, then you'll enter the job market and you will have a decent job and a decent career. The only problem is it's not true for most people. They come out of college and they have a degree and they can't get a great job. And many people who are older than them, when they lose work, can't get another job. Because companies are hiring less and less people, trying to replace more and more people with robots and things, AI and whatever. The only problem is you can't really replace a person with a robot yet. You can do some of the things they do, but humans are still integral to keeping businesses running. But as more systems automation is put in place, more businesses are going to fire more people. And the problem with the system we have is that it doesn't take into account the labors that people have done to help a company get to where they can be at the point where they can diminish the labors they need for the future from people. And so they're not distributing wealth of the future to people that work for them now and that they fire now or later. Right? And you can say, well, if they're not working for the company in the future, why should they get in their money? Because they helped create that automatic wealth system is the answer to that. If you help a company build a system of infinite wealth into the future, why shouldn't you get some portion of that? And you can say, well, the contract didn't specify. All right, but when they started working for you, there were no such things as AIs or robots doing these works. And during the course of their work, these new inventions were invented and added to the business process. So in theory, it is the company's responsibility to ensure that whoever's working for them is guaranteed some fair proportion of future material gains that the company makes, or like a pension plan or whatever, to ensure that these companies don't just let people go and never give their former employees any share of what they are literally earning in the future based on the efforts of people that have worked for them in the past. Now, again, I'm not saying companies have to go to zero and end up broke because they give away all their profits to former employees. No, absolutely not. I'm just saying, to discount completely the efforts done by the bulk majority of employees or contractors or whatever who helped build the wealth of a company and simply replace people with robots and then never have to pay them anything again, seems, what's the word? Grotesque. It's beyond greedy. It's a form of grotesque capitalism, right, where you just don't care at all about the person that committed time. The one thing they can never get back, they committed time to you, to your company, and you don't reward them for it beyond an immediate compensation. Should there, again, yeah, I get it. If somebody works for your company for a few months, didn't really do a good job, and didn't really help you build any assets, and then they leave because they got fired or they quit, yeah, of course they didn't. If they didn't help you build your company in any way, sure, you don't feel any compulsion to reward them in any way, in some way that they can get a reward in the future. But as a business practice, right, if the bulk majority of your employees are good and they stay for years, right, or whatever time they stay, they make a significant contribution of any kind, however, small or big, they make a real contribution to growing your business. It is very arguable that employees should get some kind of future compensation from that company in the form of a pension or payout or dividend or royalties or whatever it is, whatever the structure is. I know most people disagree with this, and that's fine, especially my entrepreneur friends and people who run businesses. They will definitely disagree with this, and that's fine. I don't expect people to change their opinion about this overnight, but I do expect that there be some kind of slow but sure cultural change in business about how workers are paid, especially as more and more automated systems come online, replacing the workers with these automated systems, even though it's the workers that made it possible for these automated systems to be put into place. Now, do companies have to do that? Well, probably most of them don't have to. And they'll probably get away with, not doing it. But I think ethical companies who actually care about the people that work for them, which is, I know, very, very, very few companies left these days, but ethical companies will. And they will show a model for the future that will effectively become more common over the coming decades. I do believe that. I know it won't happen right away, but it'll probably happen over the next several decades. That's my opinion anyway. And so, like I said, I don't expect the US dollar interest rate cut to make the market explode. Yeah, I could keep it going for a little while. You can always play theater and puff up the numbers. But the VEPS is how you trade the assets. It's not the news. Don't be fooled by the news. Happy trading. See ya. Hey, Shmushki, you got out at 12:50, not 1:30 like